Hello everybody, my name is Benjamin Parker and I'm doing some of the art for the game Drop Command. So in this video I'm going to demonstrate how we make one of the assets for the game. The game is very much a work in progress and we are trying to find the type of design language we want to use. In this example I'm using a concept that I already had lying around. I do some freelance work for Creative Juggernaut and Catalyst Game Labs. Catalyst Game Labs does miniatures for Battletech, so before I started doing work for them, I wanted to demonstrate in my portfolio that I was able to design miniatures. So I did a VTOL and a tank, and because this VTOL is vaguely Battletech inspired but not part of the IP, it seemed like a good design to use for this game. The game, though, has different requirements than a miniature does. For example, we are doing a super low poly retro game, and the player has to be able to look out from inside the cockpit. So even though it's inspired by this design, it's going to have a few differences. You can see the first thing I'm doing is blocking things out roughly. I want to get every shape on the canvas, and then I can adjust and push and pull things and bend things and twist things until it looks more like the concept, or in some cases hopefully better than the concept. It's a lot like drawing. When you draw a picture, you usually go from big to small. Like, you want to check that everything's working before you go in and start adding details, and like a drawing with a 3D model, once you screw up the larger proportions and then you add a ton of details onto something that's not working, it's almost impossible to fix later. One of the things I liked about this design was the narrow cockpit that flares back, and I made a mistake when I was doing the initial 3D model here. I gave it a really fat, large windscreen at the front, and the cockpit is almost vertical going back, so you'll see me fix that later. You can see me adjusting the nacelles now. I originally had them pointed straight up and down, and I was modeling them like that because it's easier to push and pull things perfectly along X, Y, and Z axes. After you rotate them, things stop working as nicely. So I got the general shape in place, and only when I was pretty happy with it did I rotate it in place. Here you can see me coming back and redoing the cockpit, adjusting it so that it flares out a lot more. It's a little bit janky. It would have been easier if I had done this properly from the beginning. I guess I'll talk a little bit about myself. I'm a concept artist by trade, and I've worked on games like Demon's Souls. I do concepts and paintings for Battletech, for Catalyst Game Labs. I've worked for a bunch of other smaller companies too. I worked on the game Dreadnought. And because my brother's a programmer, sometimes I work on games with him in my free time, and this is an example of that. You might have noticed I did all the art for Lost Stars as well. To start with, all the geometry that we work on is very unoptimized, and I just want to have it looking how I want before I go in again and try to get rid of polys we don't need. If you compare this to the VTOL that's already in the game, it has large exposed fans, whereas this has armored nacelles, so the glowy bits that provide thrust aren't going to be quite as visible and exposed. So you can see now I'm starting to get rid of polygons we don't need. I got rid of the modifier in Blender that's creating the symmetry, which leaves double polygons near the center, and also there are extra polygons in other places that we will not need anymore. They aren't contributing at all to the shape of the object. What makes this VTOL different from the other ones is we want it to be slow, heavily armored, and have a decent firepower, not too strong, not too weak. Alright, well, thank you very much for listening to my video. If you have any questions or comments, if you have any ideas about the design language or the visual directions for this game, I will be checking the comments below over the next week or two, and I'll try to get back to anything you guys have to say.